Okay, so we're gonna talk about the vacant home tax. This video is specifically created for pretty much every homeowner or soon-to-be homeowner in Toronto. I said that weird. Homeowner. If you're a Toronto homeowner, this video will be important to you because this is something that's gonna happen every single year moving forward. So without further ado, let's get into it. The way I'm gonna break this up is 4 topics. It's gonna be what is the vacant home tax and how it kind of works. The second is gonna be penalties if you forget to declare or declare late. The third I'm gonna talk about is if you're about to purchase or in the middle of a potential closing, who's responsible for declaring this and who would also be responsible for paying it if it doesn't get declared or any fines that are accumulated, all that stuff. So I'm gonna get into that. And then fourth, I'm going to get into some very logical exemptions that are allowed if you do have your home vacant. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna talk about is just what it is and what are the parameters, how it all came to be. So in 2022, the city of Toronto had agreed that this was going to be a tax that was implemented. It was supposed to be a way to incentivize homeowners that might own more than one property or non-residents that are only here, once every couple years to add to the housing stock. And they did this by, if your house is vacant for 6 months of the year or more, then you would be subject to this tax. The tax is 1% of your property's assessed value. It was for the first 2 years anyways. And now recently, they've raised it to 3% of the assessed value, which is another reason why I wanted to make this video. And there's one extremely important point I wanted to bring up as to how they make this determination. The homeowners themselves have to be the ones to declare that their home is not vacant every single year moving forward. You have the opportunity to go on the City of Toronto's website and declare that either it's your primary residence or you have a tenant living in there. Basically that the house is not just left empty. What happens is if you forget or if you don't declare it, then the house is assumed to be vacant and the tax will be implemented on you. So you really want to make sure that you remember every single year, if you have to add a Google Calendar reminder, whatever the case is, remember every single year from, let's say from December to end of February, you're going to have this opportunity to declare that your home is not vacant. So we're going to talk about topic 2 now, which is the penalties that surround this. So let's say your home isn't vacant. It never was, but you forget to declare. It's a little bit contradicting on the website, but the way that they kind of put it as if you miss the deadline to declare, you could be charged a really weird fee, which is, I don't know why this is a fee, but you could be charged $21.24 if you declare late. For whatever reason, that was the number they felt was necessary and all the power to them. But contradicting in the same general paragraph that you're reading, it also says if you declare late, you could be fined up to $250. So I don't know if that depends on how late you declare or how late you are, but I would just say be aware that if you do forget, you're not guaranteed to get hit with the tax, but you will be hit with the potential penalty, which is, I would say, between $21.24 to $250. The second penalty I'm going to talk about is if your home is actually vacant. If your home is actually vacant, and this is the case, then you will be hit with the tax. But if you don't pay the tax by the deadline, then you will start getting charged 1.25% interest every month that you do not pay the balance owed. And not only that, but if you continuously forget to pay or you just don't pay, it'll roll into your property tax bill. So there's really no avoiding it. It's just a matter of, paying it with as little amount of penalty as you possibly can. Lastly, if you're somebody who owns a vacant property and wants to work the system and try to figure out a way around it, be aware that you can get charged with fraud fines up to $10,000 on top of whatever tax that's owed. So, and penalties that come along with it. So the next thing I want to talk about is who is responsible for what if you're in the middle of a purchase or, either a purchase or selling a property. Who is supposed to declare it? Who gets hit with the tax if it doesn't get declared? Or gets hit with the fines if nothing happens? The way I've made this most simple in my mind is this. If you're purchasing a property, I'm gonna just be on the buyer side for a second. If you're purchasing a property and the closing of that property is from January 1st to the end of February, just those 2 months, then it is the seller's responsibility to declare that the home was not vacant Any other month of the year, it is the buyer's responsibility. If you purchase in December or November, September, December, any of those months, you have an exemption that you're allowed to use as a buyer. And exemptions is something we're gonna get into quickly, kind of towards the end of the video. Lastly, something I wanted to bring up was who is responsible for the tax dependent on who declares what and where does the tax land at the end of the day? The answer is it always lands on the buyer. So if it's the seller's responsibility to declare and the seller does not declare, then the tax comes through and it's the responsibility of the buyer to pay that tax. So it's important, if you are the person who is making the purchase, to make sure and ask for proof that the declaration actually took place. This way this tax doesn't hit you. If you're working with a knowledgeable realtor, hopefully they'll be covering you in that sense. You can add a clause like this into the agreement of purchase and sale to say if you do get hit with the tax, that it's going to be the seller's responsibility, but then it comes to chasing that seller and making sure that he does pay. But the simplest way to do it is just to ask for the proof and make sure it does get declared. And the last topic I'm going to bring up is exemptions. So there's some pretty logical ones in here. I'm just going to run through them quickly so you get the idea of what's out there. Keep in mind that with each of these, you'll need to provide some type of proof. You can't just claim and declare and call it a day. They're going to ask you to actually upload a file right to the website. But here they are. The first is death of a registered owner. So if you have a family member that might have passed in the calendar year, then you'd be able to declare this exemption. The second on the list is major repairs. So if you are doing some drastic renovations, keep in mind that you'll need to submit your permits and bills, and you'll need to provide basically proof that it is a major repair and it's not just something small you're trying to get away with. The third exemption is that the principal residence has officially entered a long-term care home. So if you have somebody you know who's just entered a nursing home, you don't have to up and sell the property immediately or make a move immediately. You can let that kind of play out a little bit. I believe there's a couple years that you can do this with, but this exemption does exist for that scenario. Fourth on the list is what we've already talked about, transfer of deed. Fifth would be employment. So if your employer forces you to work out of the GTA, again, you need to provide proof, but that is an exemption that you can use. And last one I'll mention is court order. So if you have a court order that says you can't live in your residence for more than 6 months, again, you'd have to provide proof, but there you have it. That generally sums up the vacant home tax explanation. So what I just want to encourage everybody to do is right now, if you made it this far in the video, stop, open your Google Calendar, write a reminder that happens once a year on, let's say, January 2nd or January 3rd to say, go on the City of Toronto website and declare my home is not vacant. That about sums it up. If that made sense to you or you have any extra questions, you can always reach out using the links below. If not, we actually did a full episode on this on the Toronto Living's Real Estate Podcast, which I'll also link in this. I'll link in one of these bubbles up here, hopefully. And if you haven't already, then please hit the like and subscribe button. And otherwise, I will see you in the next video.